Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Matthews. I am the program director for our Imagine Newark location. And with me today is Connie Palmer, our clinical training director. And we decided to go live today just to talk a little bit more about what we're calling the back to school blues. So we know there's a lot of changes that have been going on in so many people's lives, particularly now that we're gearing up to going back to school. Or what is the fall going to look like for students, for parents, for teachers, particularly in administrators. So we really wanted to talk about what the staff is going through as they're gearing up for that and preparing, and what they're dealing with as they go back to school in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm Connie Palmer again. I'm here in our center in Mountainside, and we are here supporting so many families who have experienced a death prior to the COVID epidemic, but especially since then. We have virtual support groups and orientation. So if you know someone who's in need of support, just know that we're here for you. But as Jocelyn said, we also just wanted to think about the impact on so many families around New Jersey and the schools and how they are coping with this, trying to figure out how to head back to school in the fall. And we've been hearing news reports pretty much every night on the news. We've seen things on social media. And just the many challenges that school administrators, as they try to act in the best interest of students and prevent harm, and as they struggle to make this decision, which is why we really called it the back to school blues. So what are some of the blues that school staff are facing as they head back to school? So one of the first things we think about is that there are teachers who will be going back to school who have experienced the death of a coworker during this time, either from COVID or perhaps from other deaths, reasons for death. And going back to school because there hasn't been an opportunity for a funeral or any kind of ceremony, going back to school is the first time that the school community is going to be gathered back together after that death. So what will that be like to walk into that school building, to perhaps see that office with someone else in that chair, or see that classroom with another teacher in that room? And how will the staff members be recognized? And just that, all these questions of what schools, and such a, I don't know, not only important things, but just things that are so meaningful and necessary as school staff head back.
Yeah, and I think that's like such an important point, Connie, is that the rituals that we usually do when someone has died has been stripped from us, right? We weren't able to gather and honor the people that we have had relationships with as we normally would, to kind of like talk about the impact they've had. And now they're going back into the school building with that person no longer being there, right? And even some of those people, those staff members, are going back and they're returning, and maybe they've had family members that have become sick, or friends that have become sick, or even members who have died from the virus, and how they're processing even that loss, right? So when we go back to work after a major loss or a trauma, we're carrying those feelings with us. They don't leave, and we don't leave them at home. We're literally walking into the building with all of these emotions, really. And it's like, I think I've been wondering, and I kind of, even in our conversations, we've been talking about, maybe some of you have too, how schools are going to support their grieving staff members. Thoughts of how do you manage your own feelings of loss at the same time trying to be fully present for your students the way that you normally would, because you're grieving, right, at the myriad of losses that have happened over these past few months. And so how do you, as you're trying to like grapple and come to terms with your own feelings about these losses, continue to be fully present for your students and for the other staff members as well?
Yeah, well, I was, someone had forwarded me the New Jersey Department of Education put together something called The Road Back, which is a guide to reopening. And I just wanted to share one of the sentences on page 33. It says that schools need to provide time and space for individuals to process traumatic events, reestablish connections with each other, and receive support that promotes their healing. And when we think about doing that. That's a great goal, but how will schools do that? And then also, how will they support their students who are also, many of whom are grieving? Not only are they grieving the loss of school as they knew it in this past year, and even in the fall, it won't look like a regular back to school year, but many of those students may have had someone who died. They may have had someone who got sick with the virus, and all of them are living with that chronic anxiety, just like we adults are, of will they get sick? So the school may or may not know whether those students have had a loss or not. So how will schools be prepared to support their staff, their students? Do staff members know how to support each other? And how do administrators go about creating those opportunities for support? And I think this is especially important, Jocelyn, because there are so many people working in the schools who've never had a class in grief and loss, or how even a professional development and how to support grieving coworkers and grieving students in the classroom and in the school environment. So do they feel prepared? And many of them may have that background, but one of the things that Imagine has is something called Imagine University, which is Imagine's grief education program. And we offer grief education for parents, for school staff, for students. And these workshops help schools know how to create a supportive, grief-informed school community. So in addition to those workshops, any district around New Jersey, and frankly, any district anywhere in the US could call us and just talk through some of the things they're planning to do to really manifest that goal that I just read. How will they go about creating those supportive opportunities? And we are there to just listen to you, talk with you, give you any suggestions that we might have as you are facing back into the fall and what that will be like for you.
Right. And I just think about the decision for teachers to return to work. We talked so much about essential workers and frontline workers, right? These past few months, and we talked about, doctors and nurses and, our police officers and those who are continuing to interface with individuals during this time. But now we're seeing that teachers and school staff are frontline workers too, right? And essential workers. And they have been all this time, but now even more so because they're putting their bodies at risk going back into the school building in order to provide the best education and the best supportive environment to children who are trying to kind of find some sense of normalcy in a world that has been literally turned upside down from March until now. And so while schools are doing everything they can to minimize these risks and the fear of getting the fear of getting the virus is very real, right? Teachers are still thinking about how will this impact, them, but also their students, and then also their families back at home. That's a lot of feelings to go back to school with. We already go back to school for the most part with our own thoughts and feelings and expectations for the school year. And now we're adding on top of that these thoughts and concerns, and some people even anxieties about this virus and how it can impact on so many different levels. We've been seeing how it's had a ripple effect, particularly in communities where that are marginalized and who aren't receiving the same services as other places and have been ravaged by this disease. And how do those schools go back in with these concerns as well about providing the necessary supports for teachers and students?
Yeah. And I think there may be people who are going back to school, teachers who are going back to school, and they're excited, they're getting back to normal. They're having a sense of relief that we're getting closer to hopefully that sense of what school's supposed to be like and feel like. And so there's that mixture of feelings. And I'm also thinking, I have several friends, and maybe you do too, Jocelyn, who work in the schools and also have young children. So they have to figure out if they have those staggered schedules that I know they're considering in many districts. They have to figure out childcare. They have to figure out how they're also going to support their own children in their education if their schoolwork is done from home over Zoom or some other platform. And there's just so much uncertainty, so much powerlessness that I'm guessing that these teachers feel. And yeah, I'm in awe of the resilience that teachers and school staff have shown in March. They just, over a weekend, basically, were able to transform their lessons into virtual lessons, which is no easy feat. But, I'm wondering, what is that ongoing vulnerability that started then? And actually, I think there's an increase in that vulnerability as they head back to school in the fall.
Yeah. And we think about like your transitions and times of change and uncertainty are really part of social emotional learning for every person, no matter their age. We never fully evolve and come to understanding social emotional learning. It's an ongoing process. And so,
Mm.
we, teachers, students, parents, school staff, are all lifelong learners in how to cope with change and loss, right? Nothing has prepared us for this learning curve. Absolutely
Mm.
nothing. We are all
Mhm.
experiencing this for the first time together, and trying to make sense of the world as a result of this pandemic. So here's just a few things we thought you might consider implementing in your schools or in your school district. All those who work in the schools are having a lot of feelings, which is okay and it's normal, right? Like none of this is what we were used to, as I just mentioned. And so it's okay to feel disoriented and unsure right now. But the important thing is to identify and acknowledge and talk to others about your feelings and to check in with your coworkers. We should not operate in silos. We're not supposed to be an island during this time. It's the time for us to really band together, to find safe spaces to share how we're feeling, and to also be a safe space for our coworkers as well.
Yeah, I hear that expression a lot. We're all in this together, but we're only all in this together if we really are in this together,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we're
Right.
checking on each other, if we're, if I'm having a good day, I can, be there to support someone who isn't having such a good day, who is really struggling. And when I think about that normalization of feelings for teachers, I also want to acknowledge that when kids are heading back to school, that they're heading back with all those feelings of fear or grief, and that they may have some blues about going back to school, or some may be ready to go and excited to get back to school, to that, being able to see their friends. So maybe a mixture of all those feelings, and that those, all of those feelings come with them when they get back to school. So school staff, I think it's probably one of the most important times for schools to be tuned in to that social emotional learning, helping kids to identify those feelings, express those feelings, seek out supportive adults. And one of the things that Imagine's going to be doing is we're putting together one lesson plan and a follow-up lesson plan that can be given to every grade level in a school to help create that safe space for students to feel like they can talk about the feelings that they bring to school with them, and to have those feelings be acknowledged and supported in the classroom. So in all of the decisions about logistics, which I have to say, I used to work in the schools, and I just am in awe of even being able to figure out a plan. There's so many moving parts and challenges to those logistics and best safety practices, let alone determining what's the most effective way to educate students. And those are priorities. However, the main priority in this, and actually this reopening guide that I mentioned before, says that the school culture and climate to prioritize the health and emotional well-being of staff and students above all else. So that is a huge and powerful and important statement for schools to not only make, but actually live out. So that not even just making it an equal priority, but the priority is that emotional health and that ongoing social emotional learning, so that the whole school community can together imagine a world where grief and loss and change are transformed into resilience and empathy and compassion. That's Imagine's vision.
Right.
We are here to support school staff and students all over New Jersey in this time of loss and transition. And we're here for you in terms of our peer support groups, in terms of our grief education. And we're here for you. We are part of your team as you consider all that you're dealing with right now. So we'll also be doing a Facebook Live coming up soon about how this is all impacting parents and the feelings that they are having as they send their kids off to school, which is a whole other challenge for them. So I'm just grateful that Jocelyn had partnered with me and spent some
Yes.
time talking about this today. It was Jocelyn's idea. She's like, this is a hot topic in the social
Mm-hmm.
media and on the news, and it sure is. And it's a hot topic because of all the feelings and the very real questions that going back to school has stirred up. So thank you for joining us, and definitely check out our website. Feel free to reach out to us if we can be of any kind of support. Looking forward to seeing you again on our next Facebook Live.
Good afternoon. Have a good one.
Bye.